Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing Ryan's fifth mock draft. I'm pretty sure this is your fifth one. And so we've had a nice little kind of run. And we took a little bit of a break. I was traveling. We were actually I went up to Alaska. So that was a lot of fun. So apologize for all of our viewers for a little break, but had to go see the mountains. Definitely go check it out. And anybody in Alaska that's viewing us, welcome. I don't know how you found our channel, but today we're going to be doing the mock draft. This is the first time I would say since the combine as well. So this is going to be very unique on Ryan's take here. And then also too, by the time this comes out, I believe the free agency tampering window and those conversations will be coming out. It's been neat to kind of see all of the additions or cuts that have been made so far. Very curious to see kind of what happens over this next week as well. So before we get into Ryan's mock draft, be sure to like, subscribe, and also ring the bell to get notified whenever we create new content. We're going to be working on a 3-round mock draft here shortly after the free agency week. I believe it will be next week as well, and we coming out with my mock draft. Also then too, we're going to be releasing our top 100 prospects for the 2024 NFL draft. So be sure to get notified when those come out, and also subscribe, help us grow the channel. And Ryan, let's pull up the mock draft here. And
all right.
Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah. So, let's just kind of get into it right off the bat. Nothing has changed for me in my opinion of who's going to go first overall. It is Caleb Williams. He's the best quarterback prospect I think we've seen. He's up there with Joe Burrow. I think he's honestly a better prospect than Trevor Lawrence now. Just looking at his whole body of work from 2022 to 2023, yes, 2023 had some undesirable things there, but USC was also not nearly as good as they were in 2022. And so I think you put them on the Chicago team. They're ready to win now. They end up trading Justin Fields. I don't really have that incorporated into this mock, but all in all, I think Caleb Williams is the surefire number one pick. And number two, I think, is where things get really tricky. I personally have fallen out of love with Drake May a little bit. I think you look at his physical tools, and he's height, weight, speed. He has the arm talent, right? He has the highlight reel plays. But I think when you watch him in and out of each down, I think there's some serious concern of whether he really knows what's going on, if he's going through his progressions properly. And then also just mechanically, from one play to the next, his footwork and throwing motion are completely different. Right. And some of that is he's changing his arm angle. Other parts of that is he's just a 21-year-old quarterback. Right. And I don't think the Commanders are really looking for that. I think if you go and watch Jaden Daniels play, I know PFF has him all the way down here, which I think is a crime. But if you go watch Jaden Daniels, he has that consistency from play to play in his throwing motion, in his mechanics. And then also he is by far the most athletic quarterback in this draft. And he's right up there with Lamar, Justin Fields with their running abilities in today's NFL. So we're going to go with Jaden Daniels here at number 2. I think he's just the more refined and ready prospect to come in and make an impact in the NFL. So speaking of Drake May, I am going to have him going here third, but it's not going to be the Patriots. If you look at what the Patriots are, I think putting a young quarterback that needs a lot of work in this situation, I think would be disastrous. And the situation that I'm going to have him go to isn't exactly much better because I'm going to have him go here to the Giants. The Giants are going to trade up for pick 6, pick 39, pick 70, a future second, and then they'll get pick 3 and pick 104 in return. So the thing is with the Giants, they have a year left with Drake May. Brian Daboll can go get his Josh Allen clone in Drake May. Or did I say Drake May? They have Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
So Drake May can sit for an entire season because I think Brian Daboll is going to have to do a lot of refinement with Drake May. He did that with Josh Allen, and I just think that would be a good fit for him later on. They still have draft picks to kind of build this team around him. They do have 2 tackles that were hurt last year, but I think can play at a relatively high level. And this receiving room was improved than it was the year before, but they still have other draft capital to go and build around him there. So this pretty easy. Marvin Harrison Jr. here, best receiver in the class. I'm sticking to that. He just does everything that you need a receiver to do, and he does it at a very high level. Next, Malik Neighbors. This is a guy that I don't want to say I was low on. I just thought it was close between him and Rome Odunze on who you wanted as your wide receiver 2 and 3. Malik Neighbors is elite in a lot of ways. He's an elite route runner. He has elite speed. He has really good hands. He can win and contest catch situations. He can line up inside and outside. He just absolutely puts defenders in a blender. And I think he's a fantastic prospect. So I have him going here at 5. And then if you watch this channel, you know how big of a fan I am of Joe Alt. Patriots trade back, accumulate draft capital, and go and get their left tackle for the next 10 to 15 years in Joe Alt. He is the best offensive line prospect that I can remember. I even like him more than I think Penei Sewell. And Penei Sewell had struggles when he came into the league because he switched from left tackle to right tackle. Joe Alt, plug and play left tackle. I think that is exactly where New England needs him to be, and that's exactly where he wants to be. So I like Joe Alt here. Here for the Titans, Olu Fashanu. I know teams are concerned about his power. I think you look at him in his passing set tape. I don't know if I said that properly, but if you look at that, I think he's fine. He's only 21, so he's going to grow into like his NFL strength and whatnot. But he's the most refined left tackle in pure passing sets. I think he needs some work in running sets. But with Derrick Henry most likely moving on, I think that this team is going to go maybe a little bit more spread. This is a really deep wide receiver class that they could get wide receiver options in the 3rd and 4th round. So going and getting their future left tackle as well to put in front of Will Levis, I think is going to be crucial. Here with the Falcons, I really like Rome Odunze. He can do anything for you. I think you put him in that wide receiver room, that now becomes elite. You don't have to give up anything to move up to go potentially go get a quarterback here. I do think there were a lot of rumors circulating around the Falcons going and getting Justin Fields after the combine. And I think this is ultimately the best landing spot for Justin Fields. But Kirk Cousins has also been very open about potentially wanting to move to Atlanta and play for the Falcons as well. Either way, I think the Falcons will have a very solid quarterback option that comes from free agency or outside of the draft. And putting weapons around him, I think, is going to be priority number 1 here. So Rome Odunze goes 8. So far, it's been 8 offensive players. This is where we're going to have Dallas Turner come off the board here for the Chicago Bears. Just you look at what the Bears like to do. They like to do that 3-4 with the outside linebackers. Montez Sweat is he had a really great second half of the year for the Bears, and I think kind of justified the trade and the big contract right after. I think you get another edge rusher right beside him. You just signed Jalen Johnson to this big contract, and you had Tremaine Edmonds that you brought in last year. That gives you, I think, elite playmakers at all 3 levels of the field. And I think you hit on Gervin Dexter and Zach Pickens from last year's class. And this defense was already one of the best in the league. I think gets even better next year. So I really like that pick. Here for the New York Jets, historically, I have gone with Talise Fuaga. However, after the combine, Troy Fautanu absolutely blew me away. Just his overall length, arm length, 34.5 inches, cleared that 33-inch threshold by a large margin. And his athleticism that stands out on tape stood out at the combine as well. And I think he can really play all 5 offensive line positions. And when you're the Jets and you need all 5 offensive line positions, getting a guy who can play left tackle at a really high level, he can play right tackle at a really high level, he can also play any of the other positions on the offensive line, I think is just it's immense value instead of just getting a right tackle. So Troy Fautanu here, going top 10 to the Jets. Curious to hear Jets fans' thoughts on that. I do have another trade here. If you don't know this, our dad is a big Colts fan, and he really wants one player. And I think the Colts make it happen. I think they can do it for moving minimum draft capital here. This is being difficult. And that player is Brock Bowers. I think you look at what this offense wants to do. They have really great athletes at all levels of the field. Michael Pittman, really solid athlete. Jonathan Taylor, great athlete. Anthony Richardson, an elite athlete. Going and getting a guy like Brock Bowers in plugging him into this offense, I think makes this offense so deadly. And you look at what Shane Steichen was able to do when he was in Philadelphia with Dallas Goedert. I really like this fit. And yeah, so I think that would be a nice fit there. And this one is going to be really interesting. So the Denver Broncos need a quarterback. They released Russell Wilson. They need somebody to come in and start for them right away. Everybody's talking about J.J. McCarthy and how good he is. I see the flashes there, but he's not ready to start right away. I think he needs kind of the Jordan Love treatment. And this is actually where I have Bo Nix coming off the board here. Bo Nix, 45 passing touchdowns to, I think, 3 or 6 interceptions. Just super consistent. I think he showed off that he has a better arm than a lot of people think at the combine. You watch him on tape, he's always making the right decisions. He's very accurate with the football. Measurable wise, he's 6'2", 217. He's played in some inclement weather before up in Oregon. So I like this fit. I think Sean Payton, getting him in a Sean Payton offense where he can make the right decisions. They have good playmakers already with Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, right? I think that's just a really solid fit for Bo Nix. And I think talent-wise, maybe he's a back end of the first-round guy. But I think if you're the Broncos, I wouldn't really want to trade back and risk losing him there, especially when I think character-wise, he's of the highest standard in this class. And other teams are probably going to fall in love with him also. So getting him there at 12, I think is a good fit. Next up for the Las Vegas Raiders, that right side of the offensive line is getting decimated. This is where I have Talise Fuaga coming off the board, getting a guy to come in and replace Jermaine Illuminor, who is a free agent, who could be coming back, but going and getting a young guy. They have the left tackle's name is escaping me. I think is it Colton Miller at left tackle. He's been really solid. Going and getting another guy on the right side, I think would be a nice fit. And he is the best of the right tackles, in my opinion, in this class. So next up, the New Orleans Saints. This is where I have J.C. Latham coming off the board. Just the Saints, they have, I think, 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen from last year are hitting free agency. They need really good offensive linemen. And to me, J.C. Latham, he's a little bit of a project, but he kind of reminds me of Broderick Jones from last year. Great athlete, great size, great length, has all the physical measurables that you want, and he has good tape. It's just, to me, a lot of his lapses are mental, and like you just need to get him mentally in the game, right? Like mentally right to be in the game. And that's where I think the Saints can do that. You got to, like, it needs a little bit of work, but elite first round traits, in my opinion, for a tackle. So I like him there. This is where Minnesota trades back. And I like a lot of the options here, but I think this defense needs playmakers. And Daniil Hunter is a free agent. They don't really have the cap space to bring him back. So I'm going to go with Jared Verse here. I know there's a lot of corners still on the board here, but I think within free agency, they can probably bring in a few guys to be in that secondary. Brian Flores does a good job, I think, mixing things up and getting a guy like Jared Verse, who, not to put a pun in this, is very versatile, I think is a really solid fit. So getting Jared Verse here at 15. And then I've been talking a lot, so this is going to be the last pick, and then Tyler, I'm going to throw it over to you for just a quick analysis. I'm going to go with Jackson Powers Johnson. He can play guard. He can play center. They need that interior offensive lineman to really come in and just be a force. And Jackson Powers Johnson is ready to do that right now. So they have Geno Smith. They have a good running back duo. They have a good wide receiver trio. To me, I think the big weakness of this offense has been this offensive line. They do have 2 good tackles in Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. I think now the missing link is just solidifying the interior of that offensive line. And this should be one of the best offenses in the league for the next year or two until they can potentially get a long-term answer at the quarterback position. Yeah. So Jackson Powers Johnson here. So far through the first 16 picks, what do you think?
So I think the thing with the combine coming through, there's a lot of riders and fallers, but I agree still with a lot of these picks. Like, there's a couple of new names in the top 16. Like, this might be the highest I've seen Troy Fatano. in either of our mocks. I know we've mocked Bo Nix to the Broncos. I think that could be interchangeable for any type of quarterback. But to me, and this is where I agree with a lot of it, is that the combine didn't really change too much for these top half of the guys. Like these guys were always the top prospects. These were always the blue chip kind of guys.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then now on these next 16 because there were a lot of guys that made big splashes over the Senior Bowl and then also to the combine as well. And so I'm curious on how what movement has come from the combine here in the next 16, which is where I'd expect a lot of movement coming on because there's not too much like Brock Bowers. This is about as low as I could see Brock Bowers going, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean,
lower. Maybe you could replace Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, but still, I still think they're going to be top 15 picks. So these are still just the top prospects overall in the class.
Yeah, and that was, to me, speaking of Troy Fautanu specifically, to me, the combine is more about confirming what you've seen on tape, right? Like, for example, Xavier Worthy may or may not be a name we talk about a little later. You saw that he was fast on tape, but at the combine, not only did he confirm it, he was like, oh, crap, he's one of the fastest guys. Well, technically, he's the fastest guy to ever go through the combine. Like, yeah. So, like, that's a whole different level of speed. You do have to balance that out. Like, you don't want the Tyquan Thornton effect where it's like, okay, this guy's a clear day 3 pick, and then all of a sudden runs a 4.28 and he's going in the top 50. There's a little bit of a difference there. So with Troy Fautanu, the big question for me was just his overall length. Because he's probably going to kick into guard, and if he kicks into guard, to me, that's Jordan Morgan 2.0. And spoiler, I don't have Jordan Morgan in the first round just because he's simply going to kick into guard. Mm-hmm. I just think that there's less value there. But yeah, all in all, I think a lot of the same names, just maybe in a slightly different order. You did mention, speaking of guys that impressed at the Senior Bowl and then showed out at the Combine, Quinion Mitchell, I think, is a dream scenario here for Jacksonville at 17. 4.33 speed. He has the mentality you want in your elite corners or in your outside, like, number one corners. I couldn't imagine Jacksonville getting a better pick here, frankly. I love Quinion Mitchell. He's my cornerback 1. Great. And also, he is my cornerback 1. I think cornerback 1 and cornerback 5, there's not a huge difference. Like, yeah. Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think, has fallen to the bottom of that list simply because he's had the injuries. I think athletically, he might not be quite as elite as some of the other guys on the list. But Quinion Mitchell here, I think, is a fantastic fit. For the Bengals here, another guy that really showed out at the Combine, Byron Murphy. I really like what he brings to the table. His length and explosiveness and just overall, like, physicality, I think is going to give a lot of interior offensive lineman fits over the next coming years. So getting Byron Murphy here, they also need some defensive interior guys, as some of those guys are starting to kind of age out in contracts and whatnot. So getting a guy there. And I said earlier that I think J.J. McCarthy needs the Jordan Love treatment. I think that there's no better scenario for J.J. McCarthy than to go to the Los Angeles Rams. He can sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year or two. He can develop under Sean Payton. This offense has really solid weapons, and they have a good run game. They have a good offensive line. He can learn from the best. I think that is the dream scenario for J.J. McCarthy. If I'm the Rams, I see what Patrick Mahomes did under Alex Smith, what Jordan Love did under Aaron Rodgers. Like, that to me, I think, is what I'm trying to recreate. And J.J. McCarthy has all the physical tools at 6'3", I think he came in at 219, but probably chugged a gallon of water before he got on the scale, at least. So, that's my plan if I'm the Rams. Up next at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they need a lot of help, I think, on that defensive secondary. They're getting older. They just cut Patrick Peterson. Minkah Fitzpatrick is getting older. Getting a guy like Cooper DeJean that can come in and wear multiple hats in the secondary for this defense, I think, is going to be critical. If you've watched this channel, you know how high I am of Cooper DeJean. Just his overall athletic acumen and what he's accomplished throughout his athletic career is so impressive. If you haven't already, go ahead and just like search his name on Google and look at what he did in high school track, high school basketball, high school football, like, and then go look at what he did at Iowa, and you will be amazed at just the overall athleticism of this guy. And I think he'd be a really good fit there. Can play, again, wear a lot of different hats. Pittsburgh needs that. So I'm going to go ahead and put Cooper DeJean here. Next up with the Miami Dolphins. This is a little bit of a unique one, in my opinion, but I think it'll work. The Miami Dolphins receiving group definitely it needs some help, not in the sense in the top end talent, but just depth, right? Like they don't have, outside of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they don't have anybody else on their roster for 2024. And going and getting a guy that absolutely showed out in Brian Thomas Jr. at the combine, I mean, 6'3", 214, ran a 4.35 40, just absolutely blew all of the testing out of the water. I think would be dangerous, because when you look at what Miami already poses as a threat, I think he adds a very similar threat, but also a very, very different threat. And he's a jump ball down the field receiver that also still has the track speed to completely burn you. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really solid fit there. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Terrion Arnold, I really like his game. They need cornerback help. They're right now, I believe, whoever's playing their nickel is a free agent. Terrion Arnold slots right in to be a nickel. And if James Bradbury and Darius Slay don't come back or retire or maybe play a year or two, I think he is suited to come in and replace those guys on the outside once when they leave. And I think if you look at the weaknesses of this Philadelphia team, that's the big one right now. They actually have some good young offensive linemen in the waiting to replace Jason Kelce, who just retired, and some of the other guys that are getting older. You look at the secondary, and they have older players there, but they don't have the young guys behind them. So Terrion Arnold here to Philadelphia makes a ton of sense. This is another one that I really like. Before, I would have said that the two players I'm about to name, their skill set overlaps way too much. But A.D. Mitchell to the Houston Texans here. I thought him and Nico Collins were going to be too similar prospects, but after the combine, he's 6'2", 208, and runs the 4.35. He can pretty much play anywhere because he has the short area quickness on tape that you want from a guy that could play as Z receiver. You can still leave Nico Collins at the X. Then you have Tank Dell that could play in the slot, can still kind of play out wide, but that's not his strong suit. So I really like that fit there. You get CJ Stroud, another weapon. This offensive line play was better last year. This is a really strong running back free agency class, so they can go and get a Saquon or a Josh Jacobs in free agency. I like that fit there. Defensively, I think DeMeco Ryans is going to be happy with a lot of the guys later on in this draft. So here for the Cowboys, Trayvon Diggs towards ACL. Stephon Gilmore is a free agent. Deron Bland played well, but he was a little bit more of a boom or bust kind of guy. I think if you look at some of his actual coverage grades, when he's not getting a pick six, which I understand was a lot, he was getting beat somewhat. And going and getting a guy like Nate Wiggins, elite athlete, ran a 4.28 or a 4.29 at the combine. He did end up injuring himself, which is a little concerning, but probably the most athletic of these corners here. So getting Nate Wiggins there, I think, is a really good fit. This is where I hit a point in this draft where I was like, okay, for the Green Bay Packers, I think they just need a bunch of good players. And so I actually have them trading back here with a team that needs a quarterback. So I think the trade was pick 34 and pick 70, the one they got from the Giants, for pick 25 and pick 126. And that on the draft trade chart evens out. And this is actually where I have Michael Penix coming off the board. So I know Michael Penix had a lot of injury concerns coming into the combine. Apparently, all of that came back. He has a clean bill of health from the doctors. I think you look at what New England wants to do with Alex Van Pelt and this new offense. They want to throw the ball down the field. They want to have some bigger play receivers. They did just invest in a left tackle and in this offensive line. This is a deeper wide receiver class. I think going up and getting a guy like Michael Penix, whose question marks have more to do with his injuries rather than his actual throwing ability, is a good risk for this Patriots team to take because they need other pieces. So they got to trade back and acquire more draft capital, but they still go and potentially get a franchise quarterback. And I just think that's a really good scenario for the Patriots. Maybe they just get 3, maybe they trade back, but I think Michael Penix would be a really good fit in this offense. And so I like that fit there as well. Next up, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One of the guys that I really liked from the combine was Graham Barton. He's probably going to kick inside, but I don't think that really matters. His best position is probably going to be center. And drafting Graham Barton here at 26, I think would be nice. Ryan Jansen struggling with the knee injuries. They do have 2 good tackles already. So getting a guy that can kind of play anywhere on the interior where needed, I think would be really solid. Baker Mayfield's most likely going to go back. They extended Mike Evans. I think they're in more of a win now scenario than you and I thought that they would be coming into last season. So going and getting a Graham Barton, solidifying that offensive line, I think would be crucial. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals. Is it DJ Humphries, the left tackle? He's getting older. Paris Johnson, I think, is going to kick over to left tackle. They need a guy on the right side. Who better than probably the most athletic offensive lineman in this class in Tyler Guyton? He's a little raw. He's going to need some refining, but getting a guy this athletic out in front of Kyler Murray, I think would be just absolutely fantastic. So Tyler Guyton here, first round pick. Congratulations. Next up, the Bills. They just cut 5 out of 6 players that were left in their secondary, most of which were safeties except for Tre'Davious White. Tyler Nubin is the top safety in this class. So back-to-back Tylers here are going to come off the board. I hope you're proud of me. Next up, Detroit Lions. I know they have Aiden Hutchinson, but outside of that, I think this defensive line is fairly soft. I don't mean soft in terms of like they lack physicality. They just aren't as impactful as they need to be. And going and getting a guy like Leatu Latu has the injury concerns, which I think is why he falls this far. But he's a good athlete. He's good against the run. He's really good against the pass. Just an all-around solid defensive end, can come in and probably start for them day one. I think Dan Campbell and co would love that. So Leatu Latu here. The Baltimore Ravens, this is one I've mocked before, but I just really like the fit. They brought back Justin Madubuike, and they actually just extended him on like a 4-year deal. And Keon Coleman, I know he didn't run the 40 everybody wanted, but he looked really good in the gauntlet drill at the combine. On tape, I still like him maybe a little bit more, I think, than the average person. His physicality shows up, his fluidness athletically shows up. I mean, I've talked about it before. He played college basketball for Tom Izzo and Michigan State, which is not something I think a lot of players, very few players would be able to say. So I really like his athletic prowess. He just hasn't been in football that long, and so I think he doesn't quite understand the techniques to really get separation on routes. And I think he would just be a really good fit skill-wise in Baltimore. So last couple picks here. Another guy I really like that I think really showed his fluidness athletically on the offensive side of the ball is going to be Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. Just a really solid tackle. He can play both sides of the ball. Trent Williams he's 34 now, 35. And so he's getting up there. They need right tackle help. He could also kick into guard to play and then potentially kick back out to tackle later in his career. But I really like him as a fit there. He's just a really solid offensive lineman. And after that Super Bowl, that is what we needed. And I mentioned this guy earlier, but I just think it's funny that Xavier Worthy is going to fall probably right into the lap of the Kansas City Chiefs, who really need wide receivers. He did struggle with drops, which I also kind of find ironic, but overall, as a skill set, I think what he brings to the table is going to be very unique. And I think getting him in an offense where Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes can utilize him to the best visibility is going to be like what puts him over the top as an elite speed threat in Kansas City. So Xavier Worthy comes off here. A lot of tackles, a lot of wide receivers. I think that's just going to be kind of the trend this year. I think if you look at both of those groups, you're going to have guys that are going to come in and be starters right away, all the way for tackles. I think all the way through the second round, you have guys like Patrick Paul, Kingsley Sumatia is another guy. Jordan Morgan is another one. You have guys that are going to be starting all the way down into probably the top 50. Wide receivers, I mean, you have guys in the third and fourth round who in last year's class would have been clear second round picks, simply because there's so many wide receivers this year. So all in all, we kind of went over the top 16, but what are your overall thoughts of this mock?
I when looking at the second half, and actually just as a whole, outside of then the first three QBs, the QBs are just such a wild card because wherever that's going to be the butterfly effect. Like I could see the Broncos passing on them. They just released Justin Simmons as well. So if they would want to go take that first corner off the board and improve that secondary, I could see them going that way. The Rams, they get JJ McCarthy in this instance, but also too they have a very weak defense as a whole, and there's a lot of defensive members that are still available. Nate Wiggins, so to say, Tyler Nubin, if they wanted to address that also. Actually, scroll up just a little bit. Also, I want to see. So Byron Murphy was off the board, but Jersey Newton was still on the board, though, as well, if they wanted to go and get another or lay out too. And I'm just saying that as well, just like I think that those guys would also do well. It's just going to depend on their personal preference. And I guess that's like that with every pick, but it's Nate Wiggins going 24. I could see them going 12 to Denver. You know, it just be how they view them and their overall personal. I think that just goes and shows the absolute depth of this class. And this is the first time of any of our mock drafts of there being 6 quarterbacks in the first round.
Yeah.
And I could see all the picks. I like the Patriots trading up and going and getting the guy that they want. They were able to trade back, get some draft capital, still get Joe Alt. And then they were able to trade up and go get a guy like Michael Penix. And who's still one of the top quarterbacks in this class. And they still now have a second-round pick just to pick a little bit later with the Giants' second-round pick. Yeah. So it's something that's a move I can absolutely see happening, whether if they go with Penix or if McCarthy falls or if no other quarterbacks are taken. I think that's going to be the big X factor. From there, then it's going to be personal preference with some teams, who's just going to be their top player on the board. Like for just another example, the Eagles. I look at those next couple of names. Actually, if you scroll down just a little bit more, I look at those next couple of names there, and there's not anybody I think the Eagles would not take, except Michael Penix, just because I don't think they need a quarterback. But I could see them going A.D. Mitchell and get some more receiver help. They have a lot of free agents that are there. See them also get Nate Wiggins if they like him more. You'd see them get a little more offensive line help just because with Jason Kelce retiring, but also then Lane Johnson is just getting up there in age. Not saying he's going to retire anytime soon. If JPJ falls, maybe they want to get him there and replace the center immediately, keep Cam Jurgens at the guard. So it just depends. It's just going to depend on their overall view. So it's going to be very unique. In general, once again, I think that I like this second round overall. Scroll down just a little bit more. Let's see. The Bills was one I was curious about what you would do, and I like the Tyler Nubin pick. I'm curious if they're going to be more aggressive more aggressive going to get the secondary guy that they like? Or is that a potential trade back spot with a team like maybe the Panthers who want to jump in and get the receiver that they want? Go get the Keon Coleman or the Troy Franklin, who I know some people are saying he fell, but I think he's still in.
I was actually about to mention some of the prospects that fell out of my first round. Some of the guys I probably wouldn't touch at all, but Troy Franklin is one of those guys. He didn't run well. He's small. He looked weird. Like he looked off at the combine. Like he just didn't have the fluidness about him.
His face was ugly. And He had BO, didn't wear deodorant. It was just I'm kidding. That's all fake news. I'm just joking.
But I just like him, Jersey Newton. I watch him and I'm like, okay, like he's a defensive lineman. Great. He doesn't add anything. Like where I go watch Byron Murphy and like I really see him pop off the tape there. Mm-hmm. And then also Amarius Mims, physically and just what he like, who he is is a first-round pick. Broderick Jones, I said this last year, was like he was a raw Trent Williams to me. Like just he needed a lot of work, but like athletically and size-wise, he looks like Trent Williams, and like has some of the footwork, but he's just wild with his hands. Amarius Mims, he's been a starter for 2 years at Georgia. He's only actually played in 8 games. Other than that, he's been injured. And technique-wise and like mentality-wise, I just don't see it for him on tape. Like, and so like some of those guys, like I probably won't have in a first-round mock
ever again
going forward. Like
never ever.
Yeah, and like maybe Jerza Newton could sneak back in there because I think he's just a solid defensive lineman. I don't like stuff like that.
Well, and so that's where, to bit off that point though, is like if you're a team like the Niners and you can see just the freakish athletic capability of Amarius Mims. Now Kingsley Suamataia might be more freakish and can bring more to the table immediately. But that's where I think it's just going to be then the personal preference on where they rank those guys on those boards. Like, look, we can develop this guy. Give him a little bit of time, and this is a guy that potentially by the end of his rookie year could be giving us significant minutes. But then at the same time, though, too, Kansas City they drafted Wanya Morris from Oklahoma last year, completely raw guy, and sat this year. But you go look at the tape, though, and dude's a freak athlete, just need a little bit more time to develop, and they got him in the 3rd round. So maybe Amarius Mims falls to the beginning of the 3rd round. Who knows? But it's just all going to depend on if the teams are going to want to work and develop these guys. Yeah, especially in the late 1st round.
Yeah, and that to me, I think, especially in last year's class, after pick 20, like there really wasn't a difference between the guy at 21 and the guy at 41, right? Where this year, there's not really a big difference from the guy at 10, really. Well, I like Troy Fatanu. There's not really a big difference from the guy at 12 to the guy at 45. Like that's just how talented and big of a grouping that this class has. And so I think it's a really unique draft that we're in. And this is by far the best draft class I think you and I have evaluated. And this is our 4th draft.
Well, especially, too, if you go look back at, I don't know, the 2021 draft, that was our first season. That was the Trevor Lawrence draft. And you go back and look at that draft, the only guys that really sucked are now the quarterbacks. I think Trevor Lawrence is obviously the best quarterback coming from that. I think the verdict's still on Justin Fields, but like Zach Wilson, bust. Trey Lance, it sucks to say Trey Lance is a bust. I don't know if he ever got that shot, but he definitely should not have been the 3rd overall pick. Let's put it that way. Brock Purdy saved Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's jobs.
Oh yeah, well that, and then like Mac Jones was also a bust. But I think if you look, like if the Patriots did a better job of team building in Mac Jones's first couple seasons, like we might be having a different conversation.
Yeah,
I'm not sure of that, but
and sorry, I have this up now, and so let's go: Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. Okay, so quarterbacks are very hit or miss, extremely hit or miss, and so
quarterbacks get overdrafted because they're quarterbacks. Yeah,
two of those 3 bust. Kyle Pitts, I would almost say, as a Falcons fan, he's a great prospect and a great tight end. It just he's not been utilized well. He's only been with Arthur Smith, so I'm curious to see how he does this year. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, 3 gold star picks. J.C. Horn has been solid. He's been injured though, but at Carolina, I think underrated. Patrick Surtain's been well. Devontae Smith has been great. Justin Fields,
jury's still out. Chicago, still out. He got put into a bad situation, and that's what I'm worried about with a team like New England. Like, okay, great, you might have this prospect, but you can't put anything around him.
Probably the best pick I would say would be Micah Parsons at 12 for Dallas. That was a great pick. Rashawn Slater for the Chargers has been another good pick. Elijah Vera Tucker has been good also, but both those guys have been dealing with injuries. AVT a little bit more. Mac Jones bust. Zayvon Collins has been solid. I think nothing too crazy. Alex Leatherwood was drafted 17th. I don't even think he's on the team anymore.
No, he's not in the NFL.
Yeah. So Jalen Phillips has been great. Fortunately, he's coming off that Achilles injury now, so I hope he comes back. Jamin Davis has been okay. Kadarius Toney, shout out Chiefs fans. Quiddy Pay's been solid. Caleb Farley, that I remember not liking that pick at all.
Yeah.
Christian Darrisaw has been good. Najee Harris has been good. Travis Etienne, I think, has been good. Greg Newsome, the second, has been great. Rashad Bateman. So now Rashad Bateman, that's a 27, and you're looking at some of these guys. The 2021 class was, I think, phenomenal. I think it just because the quarterbacks didn't pan out. I think it gets some poor recognition. Also, too, then is this the Monroe St. Brown draft as well?
I believe so.
Yeah, 112.
Yeah. But yeah, and so that is where like I look at this class. And granted, hindsight is always 2020, and maybe like now that I look at that draft class with tainted views, just because maybe the quarterbacks didn't work out. Like some of the guys in the first round were misses, but like I just look at the overall amount of talent in this class, and like if I'm a Patriots fan, I mean I know in this mock draft specifically, I had them trade back, and they still have that pick at 39, where I would like them to go after a wide receiver. But like realistically, you could get a Jalen Polk, a Tez Walker, or one of those guys at the top of the third round, and I think that guy comes in and starts for you. Like, and New England's wide receiver room sucks, so that's a little bit different. But like they might start on a majority of the teams in the league and that's at pick 68.
Yeah.
So I think this class is really interesting. I really like a lot of these players, and like even at the tackle spot. I know I'm kind of going on here, but like Roger Rosengarten from Washington, I think is a great fourth round prospect that could potentially come in and be your right tackle from day one. Yeah. So
it's crazy. Just to be my last thought. It's something that's like millions of dollars will sway just based off like if someone likes somebody or not. You know what I mean? Like you talk about 12. I think that Denver spot, I think that's a very good spot where like I think really starting from there, anything can happen compared to like if nobody likes you at 12 all the way down to 32, like, well, that's millions of dollars that you just lost.
Oh yeah, exactly. And like that's especially at the quarterback position, because a lot of the rookie contracts are based on position. That could be an $8 million a year, like 4 years with a fifth year signing bonus at $8 million a year, which would be, what is that? $32 million contract. But if you go to like, let's say like the Patriots pass on a quarterback and draft Bo Nix at 34, that's now like a 4 year, $2.5 million contract. Like that is a big sway in that. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of this first round mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you do differently? And on that, we will see you guys next time.